Adams and North are enemies of the deep state. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. Hello, John.
Hello, Martin. How are you going today?
Yeah, pretty good. It's extremely wet here, but making plenty of time for plenty of videos. And I noticed that, ASIC seems to be watching what we're doing.
Yes, Martin. We haven't broadcast a show for 3 weeks, and some people in our audience may be thinking, what has happened with Adams and North? There's been a very serious development that has happened behind the scenes, and I literally have been working 7 days a week, sometimes 16-hour days, to produce a very serious document, which is going to be very shocking to our audience and to the general public when we fully reveal how deep not only the incompetence in terms of ASIC, but in terms of some of the malfeasance that we talked about in terms of an earlier show. But Martin, I thought we should just come back. So we're going to do a number of important shows over the next couple of weeks. That's one. Two is, Martin, I thought I'd just let our audience know is the next round of public hearings for the ASIC inquiry is next week, the 23rd and the 24th of August. And a number of people who watch this show and who have had a very negative experience with ASIC have already been called to testify, and that testimony is going to be playing out over 2 days in terms of next week. Now, I haven't been called to testify next week, and neither have you. But of those who have been called to testify, I'm aware of a number of these very specific case studies where people have had a tremendously bad experience in terms of ASIC, and that bad experience is going to be on in terms of full display. So next week you're going to see ASIC's absolute abject poor performance with witness after witness after witness who are going to detail their experience in terms of dealing with Australia's financial police force. But on top of that, there is something even bigger that we are going to reveal on this channel, and we are, Martin, I think it's fair to say we are the tip of the spear. Now, one of the key things I just want to get across to the audience, Martin, is before we move any further is I should say that perhaps we should say to ASIC officials, if they are watching, perhaps it would be in the public interest if you stopped watching this program. Because, Martin, what I've been able to learn over the last few weeks, and including a new document that was revealed to us today in FOI through the Freedom of Information process, ASIC has developed a fetish or some sort of obsession with this program and what you and I have to say. A couple of weeks ago, I got a phone call from a particular senator who told me that that 24 hours after being attacked in the Australian Senate for in terms of failing to be transparent and complying with Senate orders, the ASIC government relations team went around to a number of senators to talk about the issues of the inquiry and in terms of the issues in terms of these public interest immunity claims that have been playing out over the last couple of months. But a number of these conversations, ASIC officials talked about me, talked about you, talked about this show, and they said that this show is we are engaging in slander. It is unfair that we do this show because supposedly ASIC has some sort of, they're not in a position to respond. And my position, Martin, is that we are free to do the show. I think we're doing this show accurately because of the information we have received, and the fact that ASIC is going around Parliament attacking me, attacking you, that I think is completely uncalled for. The other thing I just wanted to bring to our audience's attention, Martin, is that if we can put slide 1 on the screen, one thing that I did 4 weeks ago was I put a Freedom of Information request into ASIC, and I said that all the documents related to the inquiry steering group. So there's a steering group within ASIC that's focused on the inquiry. I want all those documents, agenda papers, minutes of meetings, etc. And I've got a range of documents today. And one of the documents is a PowerPoint slide, which the slide is dominated by talking about me, saying talking about what I say on this show with you, Martin, but also some of the Freedom of Information request activities that I've been engaged in, which is consistent with the law. Under the law, I'm allowed to request documents out of ASIC. Some of those documents have been able to reveal all sorts of embarrassing things and perhaps even nefarious things that ASIC don't want the public to know. And we've been sharing some of those documents here on this channel. And yet now we're getting to a situation where it doesn't matter what we do. ASIC is in Parliament talking about us. ASIC is watching us. ASIC is writing notes, official file notes about our shows. They're producing PowerPoint slides about us. And given their long history of failure, one thing I think I should say is it's time for ASIC to stop talking about Adams and North and actually focusing, going after the crooks. And the one thing that Senator Bragg said in the last fortnight in Parliament is that Australia has a major problem with white-collar crime. It just so happens that the criminals don't go to jail and that we don't have effective law enforcement. So there's plenty of crooks to go after across Australia, according to Senator Bragg. So I think it's time for ASIC to stop watching this show and allow public commentators to provide objective analysis, and for ASIC to do their job and to satisfy the concerns of the public in the Senate, because they are failing in that responsibility.
Well, it seems to me, John, they're almost being a bit paranoid about what you've been up to, right? But we should remind everybody that one, the information that you formed the report around was their information. Two, the information was in the public domain. And three, all the other developments, including, of course, the Senate inquiry and everything else, is all due process. So, whilst I'm very flattered to have people from ASIC watching our shows, please like and subscribe, folks. The truth is that there's nothing that we've done which is actually in any way beyond the pale. So it seems to me that there's a paranoia in ASIC.
One point that I think, Martin, that we should be very clear on is that citizens in Australia are allowed to criticise the government, and we are allowed to criticise the government very aggressively, and we have that democratic right to be able to do so. But the government, especially with the use of taxpayer money, doesn't have the right to engage in terms of surveillance where there is no legal basis in terms of conducting that surveillance. So ASIC is a law enforcement body. They are there to use their powers and their resources to go after those people who have contravened the law. Now, we haven't contravened the law. Martin, you haven't received any formal correspondence from ASIC saying that you're under investigation for contravening the law. Neither have I. So if we haven't contravened the law, if we're not under investigation, if we're not actually engaging in any type of activity which is within ASIC's jurisdiction, there is no need for ASIC to use resources and the time of their staff to watch this program. I think this program is a educational commentary between you and I, Martin, and in terms of the broader public. Perhaps ASIC is unaccustomed to a couple of YouTube people exposing how poorly they are at their job. So the best way for ASIC to respond is not to create PowerPoint slides about me. It is for them to actually focus on improving their performance and actually engaging not just with us, but with the broader public who have deep concerns about ASIC's performance, and find ways that they can actually improve how they do their job and obviously improve the outcomes they achieve, so that the public and the parliament become happier with a corporate regulator that's actually fit for purpose and that is actually effective in enforcing the laws of the parliament.
Well, yeah, and it's worth, I think, reflecting on, if they're going around saying you're a nutcase, John, on what basis? That for me is something, again, beyond the pale. They shouldn't be doing that. But more importantly, if they are really in internal meetings having presentations about what we say on this channel, I find that absolutely remarkable. And it goes, again, not only to their paranoia, but to the fact that they still don't get it. They still don't get that they have a job to do, which is effectively the supervision of the financial system, particularly with regards to corporate conduct and a lot of companies, and also, of course, the protection of investors and those who are engaged in the market. Those are the things they should be focusing on. So every time they have a presentation about what John Adams is doing, well, they're missing the point, aren't they?
Well, sure. I mean, the interesting thing over the last 2 months, Martin, is that they've called me a nutcase. They've called me a conspiracy theorist. I mean, obviously, when we go back to some of the commentary in terms of last year, they said my public report, the Adams report, was silly. They said that I didn't deserve to be able to criticize ASIC. Only in the last few weeks, when they was responding to a question on notice about my report, they said my report was superficial and it was oversimplified. All I did was take ASIC's numbers from their annual reports, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, showed a number of trends, and then based on my own experience having dealt with ASIC, I provided some commentary, and then obviously I spoke to a number of stakeholders who also have had experiences in terms of ASIC, and then I wrote a report. And then I said to Parliament, here's my report, check the numbers. And Treasury checked the numbers, and they said it was quite substantially correct. And basically, I said that we need an inquiry because the trends look very unhealthy. And the interesting thing, Martin, is that still to today, they say that it's superficial, they say that it's oversimplified, and yet they haven't, in detail, provided a cogent explanation for these trends in a way that has satisfied the concerns of the Parliament. And so the one thing that I think it is fair to say is that what this process has revealed in terms of this inquiry is the level of concern and the level of poor performance that we have seen in terms of ASIC. The one thing I can reveal, Martin, is that in the last week, I had the opportunity to speak to someone on the phone for a couple of hours. And then they physically wanted to come see me. We spent 3 hours together face to face. And someone went through a horrific experience a number of years ago at the hands of ASIC. What I was told was absolutely shocking. And they thought that they would have no opportunity to seek any redress because of ASIC's conduct. And they didn't know about you and I, but obviously they have been able to participate in the ASIC inquiry. And this person came to me and said they wanted to thank us for in terms of our work, in terms of me writing the report, but also communicating to the broader public and to the Parliament, because this person is going to testify in terms of next week, and they will have very powerful testimony about their experience in terms of how, what is it really like to deal with ASIC, particularly when you have information that ASIC may not want to hear about. So he thought his story was going to be lost in the sands of time. But we were able to create a process that he now has platform to tell policymakers what exactly happens in terms of ASIC and closed doors. And I think we're really, if I'm going to say, what is ASIC so scared about? It's scared about this. ASIC is the most secretive government agency in the entire federal government. And it's more secret than even the intelligence services like ASIO. And the reason why, Martin, is that the intelligence services are overseen by the Inspector General for Intelligence and Security. So you have an independent inspector that can go into any of the security agencies and make sure that those staff are doing the job they are legally required to do. They are following procedures. They are fulfilling the wishes of the minister. And anyone can make a complaint against the leadership of the intelligence services, and obviously they can be held to account by the Inspector General. ASIC has no Inspector General. It is a complete opaque operation. They don't allow anyone to get inside the organization, find out what's going on. And obviously the Senate has been attempting over the last 3 to 6 months to get a whole host of files out of ASIC, particularly the investigation files of closed cases. And ASIC has been fighting every step of the way in terms of not allowing even Parliament, even though there are orders of the Senate, to be able to look at this. And why? Because they have some big secrets they've been holding on to for a long time, and they don't want those secrets out. And so one thing that ASIC is very effective in doing, Martin, and this is why this problem with ASIC has been ongoing and getting worse for the last probably 10 to 15 years, is they ignore people, they basically don't respond, they obfuscate, they deny that there's any problems, and they're very good at playing the clock. They run the clock down, they crush people's spirit in the process, and then obviously when it comes to the odd parliamentary review or the Royal Commission, they basically frustrate the process, don't provide them full comprehensive answers, play little tricky games here and there, and then just wait for the politicians to move on to the next issue. And then the same people continue on in the job, and they continue to collect the paycheck and continue to do a very poor job. And so I think because you and I don't have to talk to ASIC, and quite frankly, I don't think we don't have an appetite to talk to ASIC, but the fact that we are able to, on a regular basis, communicate in an articulate, intelligent way that what is really happening in terms of financial regulation and the effectiveness of the corporate regulator, this is something they're not used to. The level of scrutiny that the alternative media is providing is they're unaccustomed to that, because typically they get very friendly press, particularly from the Australian Financial Review and the journalists there. And so this level of ongoing critical analysis is something ASIC has never faced before. And the fact that we here on YouTube were able to instigate a parliamentary process, and we've been leading the policy discussion, they are very uncomfortable with that. And I think that we are the tip of the spear. We have been revealing a whole host of very important things on the show. One of the things that we revealed, Martin, in terms of last month was we did the show ASIC ordered the manipulation of Australian democracy. We showed an email from the morning of the 27th of October. That email was actually quoted in Parliament by Senator Bragg. So the things that we say on this show and some of the documents we have been able to reveal has been directly sort of entered into the parliamentary record by various contributions in terms of senators. And so again, so just like with the cash ban, intelligent people, intelligent citizens they absolutely can make a difference. And we have the legal and democratic right to make that difference. And we don't have to genuflect in terms of the altar of the deep state. And obviously, while we continue to do this important work, I think it's important that ASIC realize that it's completely inappropriate that they are obsessed with me or obsessed with in terms of the show, and that they should do the job that they are being paid by the taxpayer to do.
Absolutely, John. And I want to make a quick point here, because I'm going back to the Financial Services Royal Commission. And there, of course, a lot of bad behaviour was highlighted, pretty much across the board, but including some of the regulators. But the consequences and implications from that didn't ultimately change the behaviour or the mechanisms for some of those regulators. So I guess my slightly sceptical view is, whilst we might see a lot of dirty washing being brought out over the inquiry over the next little while relating to ASIC and their behaviour, I still have yet to be convinced that there is going to be a real serious attempt at change, which of course is something that is really, really critical, because you and I both know that the way things are currently set up, it is failing miserably, ordinary people and businesses across Australia. So I am interested that there will be disclosures and there will be evidence, but I still want to see that change.
Well, I mean, that is something I wholeheartedly agree with you, Martin. Now, the one point that certain people in Parliament have been making is that the Albanese government, particularly Minister Stephen Jones, the Minister for Financial Services, is running cover for the ASIC leadership. Labor is basically trying to protect they're trying to protect in terms of ASIC, and they're trying to shield off any form of criticism that is coming from whether the alternative media like us or the mainstream media, or even in terms of the opposition, or in terms of the crossbench in terms of the Senate. So I agree with you, change is required. And at the end of the day, all that an inquiry can do is hand down a report with a series of recommendations. So it'll be very interesting to see how aggressive the committee goes in terms of the next 2-3 months. And that's obviously up to Senator Bragg and his colleagues to really do justice to all the victims that have a significant amount of information to impart on the Parliament. about their negative experience in terms of ASIC. But then it's obviously a matter of the inquiry and the parliament as a whole imposing their will on both ASIC and the government to say that the status quo is completely unacceptable and we want real change this time that is going to ensure that we get better outcomes in terms of civil and criminal penalties for genuine fraudsters and crooks that are pervasive across the Australian economy.
Absolutely, John. Well, this is actually the heart of the matter, right? So all of the work that you're doing and I'm doing and others are doing, it's all about making Australia a better place to do business, to have the appropriate degree of protections for investors and businesses and individuals in the country. And I'm afraid that I think there's a big gap between what it should be and what it is, but this is an opportunity in the interest of the people to force it in the right direction.
Well, you and I agree that we can do better, but in the world of the deep state, who write these ridiculous PowerPoint slides about me, one is they are doing a great job, and they really can't do much better than what they're doing. But two, they don't respect, they don't acknowledge that people like you and I have the right to do these programs and to be able to speak our mind. Because they say it's slander, and they basically say that the parliament and the politicians should completely ignore what we have to say. Well, I mean, the politicians can ignore us if they so wish, but we are going to see next week, Martin, is that there's a whole host of people who have been watching this show, but also other people who have had tremendously negative experience. They're going to be before Parliament, and we're going to see the other side of in terms of the story. ASIC says that everything's great, and they reject any criticisms that they're an ineffective regulator. Next week, we're going to see a completely different story, and we're going to cover those stories here. But beyond that, there is something even bigger that's coming that ASIC has really no understanding of what I've been able to uncover, and we are going to break it here, and we're going to show the level of malfeasance and the real big secrets that have been happening inside ASIC that I was able to only uncover the last 4 months. And dare I say, a lot of people are going to be very shocked with what we are going to reveal on this channel.
Well, John, look forward to that. And thanks once again for your continued due diligence here. So much is hinging on it. And I look forward to the progress. And remember, folks, this is all about making sure that the interests of the people are protected. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. We'll see you next time.